Hi, this will be video 3 in the Hoppy Bunny tutorial. In the last couple of videos, we set up a basic game scene and we added some objects to the scene, and then we created a special scene for the hero. In this section, I'd like to add some physics properties to the objects. So physics in SpriteKit allows you to create game objects that will interact with other objects as if they were, real physical objects, Of course, everything's done in 2D, but, if you've ever seen any or played any games where objects, bounce off other objects or hit things and knock them around the screen, this is the kind of thing that we're adding here, okay? So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on the ground object. Now, the ground object should be a solid object that other objects run into and stop when they hit it. So what we'll do is we'll select the ground, and then we'll go to the property inspector here. And if we scroll down a ways, we'll find a section labeled physics definition. Okay? And then it asks us here to set the body type. So right now there's no physics object, so it says none. But what we'll do is we'll switch this to the bounding rectangle. So what we're saying is like, hey, let's turn this into a physics object, and the shape of that object will be a rectangle. Okay, and then it gives me a whole bunch of other properties for physics here. Okay, and we'll come back to some of these later. First of all, what we want to do for this object is, since it's a ground, we don't want it to be able to move. So dynamic objects can move and get moved by being hit by other objects. Objects that aren't dynamic are solid. They stay in a fixed location, and that's kind of the way the ground works. So let's uncheck dynamic. Next, we'll uncheck allows rotation because the ground shouldn't be allowed to rotate. And then we'll uncheck affect by gravity. So affected by gravity means the object would fall down the screen. So we don't want the ground to fall. We want it to be a solid, solid in one place. So we'll uncheck this, okay? So that's pretty good. Next, what we'll do is we'll go to the hero, okay? And the hero here, there it is, right? We'll click on the sprite here, and it'll say texture bunny 1, and then we see the position and the size, right? And what we want to do here is we want to add a physics body to the bunny. Now the bunny is kind of an odd shape, so what we want to do is we want to pick a physics object that's efficient and that fits the shape of the bunny as closely as possible. And if I scroll down again and I find the physics definition for the bunny, what we can do is we can set the body type to a bounding circle. Okay, so circles are the most efficient object for the computer to calculate. So that one's kind of our best choice whenever it's appropriate. And I think it fits the bunny pretty closely there. Okay, and you'll be able to see a very faint light blue circle around the bunny. If you can't see it on my screen, you'll be able to see it when you do it, right? Now for the bunny, we're going to leave dynamic, allows rotation, and affected by gravity checked because maybe this is a physics object and it might want to rotate, and we definitely want it to fall down the screen, right? That's going to be part of the game, right? So we'll leave those checked. So that's pretty good. So now we've got one other thing to do before we test, and then we'll test our game out, okay? You'll see there's a couple files here, and the ones that end SKS are these files where we kind of visually edit objects and set properties on them here in the inspector. The files that end in .swift are files that contain code. Pardon me. And this one right here, gamescene.swift, is where all the code for our game scene exists. And the default file comes with a lot of code. Okay, and we want to get rid of that code and rewrite it for ourselves. So at the top here it says import sprite kit. We need that. And import gameplay kit. We don't really need this one, but we might use it for something, so we'll leave it there. These import some extra libraries that we can, extra blocks of code that we can use. Next we have a class definition here. So this file is the class game scene, and this is the class definition. It begins here. And then it starts with this curly bracket and then ends with a curly bracket at the very bottom. Okay, so we want to delete everything between those two curly braces. So leave the one here at the bottom, and then let's select all of the code in between. And what I'll do is I'll hit delete on the keyboard, so the game scene is empty. Later we're going to come back and add a lot of code in here, and you're going to do most of your work in here, but for right now we'll just leave it empty. Okay, so now we're ready to test our game. So Xcode provides an iPhone simulator. So in other words, instead of having your own phone, you can actually test on your own phone with SpriteKit, and we'll do that later. But for right now, we can test very quickly on the desktop with a simulated iPhone. And to do that, what you'll do is you'll go to the menu here, and you'll choose an iOS device to test on. And so you can choose any one of these devices. I have an iPhone 6S, so I'm going to choose that. But you can choose any one of the phones here. If you have an SE or a 7, you can choose those, right? But once you've chosen your device, you can click the Run button. So just click the Run button. Xcode will build your project, and then it'll launch the simulator. And it may take a moment for the simulator to launch. There it is, right? And there's our scene, right? So I see the clouds, I see the crystals, I see the sky. Where's the bunny? Well, let's add the bunny to the scene. So I'll click the Stop button to stop the simulator, and then I'm going to switch back to GameScene.sks, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the hero into this scene. So don't just click to select that, because that switches to this scene. With GameScene selected, click and drag the hero into the scene. And there's our bunny. So now we see the bunny in the scene here. Now let's test again. Click the Run button, and what you'll see is you'll see the bunny fall down the screen, right? So it falls and it kind of bounces when he hits the ground. So this means our physics engine is working, right? The gravity is pulling the bunny down the screen, and when the bunny hits a solid object like the ground, right, which is not dynamic, then it stops, right, because the ground is solid. Okay. And then we see our animation too, like the bunny's ears are flapping, right? So that's pretty good so far. So one more thing. Now in the tutorial, sometimes what happens is the stacking order of the objects gets mixed up, right? So, the bunny might appear, oh, there it goes. It appears behind the crystals rather than in front of the crystals, right? So what we want to do is we want to guarantee that the bunny is always in front and that some objects are always behind. That's called z-index or z-position. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go back to Game Scene, and in Game Scene, if you click on the ground and you look at the sprite properties here, you'll see that there's the position, that's the X and Y, the horizontal and vertical, right? And then right below it, it says Z position. So the Z position for the ground can be 0, and if I click on the crystals, the Z position can be 0 also. So anything with a higher number than 0 will be in front of the ground or the crystals, okay? Let's say the clouds need to be in front of the crystals in the ground. Let's set the Z position to 1. Okay? Now you'll notice that the clouds are in front of the bunny. Right? Let's zoom in on that a little bit here. Right? So there's the bunny. It's behind the clouds. But maybe we want the bunny in front of everything else. So what we'll do is we'll click on the bunny and then set the Z position to 2. So as long as this number is higher, it can be any number you like, but as long as it's higher than the value that the other objects have, then this one will stack in front. So with a z-index of 2, this is in front of the clouds that have a z-index of 1, right? And this time if we test, our bunny will definitely be in front of the crystals because the crystals have a z-index of 0. Okay, so anyways, there's our game, and it's coming along nicely, and we've got everything kind of working and stacking correctly, and the physics are working. So thanks for watching, and good luck with your projects.